I wasn't searching for them, but somehow they kept finding me. Young, bold, and curious enough to blur the lines most people never dare cross. The first caught me with a single glance. The second reminded me of feelings I thought had long since faded. And the third, he understood what I needed before I even knew myself. I kept telling myself it was nothing. Just company, just conversation, just a way to pass the time. But in the quiet moments, when their voices lingered and their presence filled the room, I stopped worrying about what it was called. All I knew was that I wanted it to last. It's strange, the way silence settles into a home. You expect loneliness to be loud, but for me it was like dust gathering on a shelf. Easy to ignore until something disturbs it. I wasn't looking for excitement. Not anymore. Not at my age. I told myself I was done with that, or at least convinced myself I was. Then Ryan appeared. Not dramatically. Not like a scene from a movie with music swelling in the background. He came the way most changes do, quietly, politely, and with a smile that seemed almost too comfortable. He was a friend of my neighbor's son, 18 or 19, in that stage of life where everything feels like it's just about to begin. They were helping her move furniture, laughing, talking loudly, the kind of energy that carries through open windows. I happened to glance out from behind my curtain, and for some reason, I lingered there longer than I meant to. It should have been nothing. Passing moment. But a week later, he knocked on my door. Said he remembered me from that afternoon, that my neighbor told him I was kind, and that he was looking for some extra work. Did I need help around the house? There was something about the way he asked, confident yet unassuming, that caught me off guard. He stood barefoot on the porch in worn shorts and a faded t-shirt, with that loose, easy confidence young people wear like it's second nature. I said yes. Not because I truly needed help, but because I was curious. Curious about what stories he might share, how he might fill the stillness of my kitchen, what it would be like to have life moving through the space again. I told myself it was just neighborly kindness. Nothing unusual about hiring someone to clean the gutters or sort through old boxes. But I found myself noticing small things. The way his laughter carried. The way he worked without hurry. The way he seemed completely at ease in my home. It stirred something in me I hadn't felt in a long while. Not just interest, but a quiet intrigue that made hours feel like minutes. He came by twice more that week. Each time he stayed a little longer, asked a few more questions, seemed more at home. He started calling me by my first name, and the sound of it, so casual yet so familiar, landed in a place I didn't expect. Still, I kept my distance. I wasn't foolish enough to read too much into moments like these. Not until the night it rained. He'd come to fix a hallway light that wouldn't stop flickering. I told him there was no rush, that we could do it another day, but he just smiled, brushed the rain from his hair, and said, "I don't mind a little water." A simple comment, probably nothing more than it seemed. Still, I remember the way he looked at me then, as if we both knew there was something in the air neither of us was naming. And I remember the pause that followed, the kind that feels heavier than silence, when two people are pretending not to notice it. I handed him a towel and a dry shirt, one of mine, and he stepped into the hallway to change. He didn't close the door, didn't seem to care if I stayed in sight, and I didn't look away. I noticed the quiet confidence in the way he moved, the way the lamplight caught on his hair, the way he seemed completely at ease in my home. He met my eyes briefly as he straightened, and although neither of us smiled, something passed between us. Slow, weightless, and quietly dangerous. Still, nothing happened. Not that night. But after he left, I found myself thinking about it. About him. More than I meant to. About the sound of his voice in my hallway, the way the room felt warmer when he was in it, the shirt he never returned. Maybe that would have been the end of it if not for Jonah. Where Ryan carried a brightness and easy charm, Jonah was something else entirely. He came to my door through a friend of a friend, asking if I had any spare tools. Said he was working on a project for his father's birthday. He was taller, leaner, with a stillness about him that made you want to lean closer just to see what he might say next. He wasn't as talkative as Ryan, but when he did speak, his words felt deliberate, chosen carefully, as if they carried weight. I invited him in, offered coffee. He declined, but lingered anyway. running his fingers along the spines of old novels on my shelf. After a while, he glanced over his shoulder and asked, "You read these?" I nodded. He gave a faint smile and said, "Didn't think guys like you were into love stories." There was no judgment in his voice, just something knowing, something that made me wonder what he saw. The silence that followed carried a kind of warmth I didn't expect, the sort that makes you aware of every small sound, every breath. But like before, nothing happened. We just talked. He left. Still, I couldn't ignore it. Something in my home had shifted. It wasn't just space and furniture anymore. It felt alive in a way it hadn't before, humming faintly as though the walls were holding secrets. And then, less than a week later, there was Luca. Some people take years to make their way past your guard. Others only need a glance, a tilted smile, and the right timing. And suddenly they're in before you've realized you opened the door. Luca was that kind. He didn't arrive by chance. Maybe he'd heard from Jonah, maybe from Ryan. I never asked and he never explained. But the way he leaned against my doorframe, casual and assured, made it clear he knew exactly how he wanted to be seen. He was younger than the others, but carried himself with the ease of someone who'd long been used to attention. There was a quiet confidence in the way he moved, in the slight curve of his smile, as though he already knew how the conversation would unfold. "You're the one who lends out shirts and tools, right?" he asked, voice edged with dry amusement, as though he already knew the answer. I let him in. He moved through the room like he'd been there before, his gaze wandering easily over the shelves and pictures. I offered him water, and he accepted, our eyes catching briefly when I passed him the glass. Luca didn't pretend to be there for a job. He didn't offer to help or make excuses. He simply perched on the arm of the couch, letting the quiet stretch until it felt intentional. Then he asked, "Do you let all the neighbors spend time here?" I smiled faintly without meeting his gaze. "Only the well-behaved ones." He chuckled at that, low and warm, but there was nothing playful in the way he studied me. It wasn't boyish admiration, and it wasn't teasing. It was sharper than that, quieter, like he was taking in every detail, searching for something he hadn't found yet. Slightly forbidden. His gaze didn't shift away quickly like Ryan's sometimes did. Nor was it distant and guarded like Jonah's. Luca looked as though he'd already formed an opinion, direct, unfiltered. Then, with casual boldness, he asked, "Which one did you like best?" I frowned. "What?" He tilted his head, smirking. "Ryan, Jonah, me? We've all been here, right? I'm just curious whose company you enjoyed most." It wasn't an innocent question, but I let it pass. "You're imagining things," I said. "Maybe," he replied, leaning back against the couch. One leg dangled loosely, his palm pressed to the cushion behind him. The movement made him seem even more at ease, like someone completely comfortable in a stranger's living room. Or maybe I'm not. Could have ended there, just teasing remarks and silence. But when he finally stood to leave, he paused a step too close. Close enough for me to notice the faint scent of rain still clinging to him. He held my gaze and said, almost under his breath, "You don't look at us like we're just passing through." I didn't answer, but he smiled as if I had, then left without another word. The truth was, he wasn't wrong. I didn't see them as casual visitors. I saw them as a reminder of what it felt like to be noticed, to be valued, to have someone's attention fill the quiet spaces in my home. And maybe they sensed that because after Luca, things shifted. Ryan began texting me. At first, just check-ins, then questions, then photos of projects he was working on, a haircut, a weekend build, a picture from the gym. Jonah showed up with tools I'd never lent him. Said he found them and thought they were mine. He stayed for coffee, then stayed longer, watching me like he was piecing together a puzzle no one had told him the rules to. Luca came by twice that week. No reason. Just appeared at my doorstep, wearing that same easy grin and a certain look in his eyes that felt both curious and unshakable. One evening, he stepped into the hallway, stood still for a moment, and murmured, "So, are you ever going to make a move? Or should I?" I didn't answer, not because I didn't have one, but because I wasn't sure I could stop once I started. The house became a pressure chamber. I'd sit on the edge of my bed, hearing the echo of footsteps long after they'd gone. I'd notice the smallest things. A faint scent left behind, a book slightly out of place, the cushion on the couch holding a memory of someone's presence. And when I closed my eyes, it wasn't just one of them I thought about. It was all three. Strangely, there was no jealousy, no competition. They came and went like seasons, separate yet oddly aligned, as if they shared an unspoken understanding I hadn't yet put into words. Then came the night Ryan stayed late. I'd cooked something simple and he offered to clean up. He moved through the kitchen like he'd done it before, sleeves rolled, water running. I sat nearby, saying little, just watching. When he finished, he leaned against the counter and asked, "Can I ask you something?" I nodded. "Do you ever think about it?" I didn't need to ask what he meant. Instead, I said quietly, "Do you?" He didn't smile or laugh. His voice was steady. "Every time I leave here." He crossed the room and sat beside me, closer than usual. We didn't touch, but the air between us felt like it had. There's a moment, right before the leap, when the world holds still, waiting to see which way you'll go. I lived in that space for weeks, a breath away from crossing a line. That night, he didn't move closer. He didn't break the moment. He only said, "Next time, maybe I won't stop myself." And then he left, the cold air following him through the open door. After that, the visits changed. Jonah came by more often, sometimes with takeout, claiming he didn't want to eat alone. He never overstayed. He didn't use words to flirt. He used silence, proximity, the weight of his gaze. One stormy evening, he accepted my offer of a drink, and we sat in the dim light, knees almost touching. The rain pressed against the roof, steady and insistent. He slipped off his damp jacket and draped it over a chair. I caught myself noticing the way the light caught on him, and he must have seen it because Jonah noticed everything. "You're easy to read, you know," he said, his voice low but calm. I tried to act unfazed, but he saw more than I wanted to admit. I stood to refill the wine. As I set the bottle down, my hand brushed his. Not intentional, just one of those moments you can't quite name. But it lingered, and so did his gaze. When I sat again, we stayed close. We didn't speak. The storm carried the conversation for us. Then came Luca, unannounced as always. It was nearly midnight when he knocked. His hair was damp from the night air, his breath misting in the cold. "I was bored," he said, "and I figured you wouldn't be asleep." He wasn't wrong. I told him I wasn't in the mood for company, but he waved it off. "Good," he said lightly. "I didn't come for small talk." He walked straight past me into the living room and settled into the couch like he'd always belonged there. I followed, arms crossed, more amused than annoyed, and stood as he stretched out, utterly at ease, like the night was his to own. "Do you ever just want something and take it?" he asked, voice low and lazy, edged with challenge. I didn't answer because the truth was yes constantly. But I wasn't sure if what I wanted was him, or the wild, reckless feeling he stirred in me. That dangerous spark I hadn't tasted since I was much younger, and far more foolish. Luca leaned back, arms braced behind him, legs shifting apart just enough to make it clear this wasn't a social call. "I think about you a lot," he murmured. "I don't know what it is you do to us, but we talk. Ryan, Jonah, me. Somehow you always come up." That admission hit harder than it should have. "You talk about me?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay even. He nodded, gaze sharp. "Sometimes I think it's a game, a test. We're all trying to see who you'll choose first or most. But lately, I think maybe you already want all of us." The words hung in the air like smoke. I stayed silent because there was no script for a moment like this, and Luca knew it. His smile wasn't smug. It was knowing, intimate. He rose slowly, stepping close enough that I could catch the faint trace of his cologne. Warm, citrusy, summer tangled with sweat. As he passed, his fingers brushed my wrist. "I'd stay if you asked," he whispered, not turning back. "But I won't beg." And then he was gone, swallowed by the night. That was the week it stopped feeling like coincidence. Ryan appeared the next evening without warning. Jonah came the day after, lingering longer than usual, asking questions he'd never asked before. About my past, my regrets, my desires. Luca sent a photo of his bare back in a mirror, just above the waistline of his jeans.
No capschen. No explanation.
None of them asked if they were crossing a line, because they knew they already had. And the worst part? I didn't want them to stop. I started dreaming about them. Sometimes one at a time, sometimes overlapping. Sometimes they stood on opposite ends of my living room, watching each other, and watching me. Sometimes their touch was gentle, sometimes it was hungry. I'd wake in the dark, sweating, heart pounding, skin flushed with a mix of shame and need. In the daylight, I could pretend it was harmless, that they were just boys playing games and I was simply an observer at the edge. But at night, the pretense collapsed. Not when their scent lingered on towels. Not when I'd find a forgotten hoodie and press my face into it like a lovesick teenager. Not when I'd lie awake, wondering what it would be like to finally give in. And then the choice was taken from me. It was Ryan who set it in motion, but it wasn't just him. He invited me over one Friday evening, said he needed help putting together a shelf. Simple, innocent. But when I arrived, Jonah was there. And Luca, all three of them. No one looked surprised. No one explained. They just smiled, different smiles, but all with the same edge. Ryan stepped forward, closing the door softly behind me. Luca tilted his head, that glint in his eyes both daring and knowing. Jonah said nothing, but the heat in his gaze was impossible to ignore. Standing there between all three of them, I realized for the first time, I wasn't holding the reins anymore. It should have felt wrong, being alone with them in that room. But with the door shut and the silence swelling around us like a rising tide, a secret, but it didn't feel like one. It felt inevitable, like something long overdue, waiting for its moment to break free from the shadows. No one spoke at first. Not them. Not me. The only sound was the low hum of music drifting in from somewhere unseen. Its rhythm was slow, pulsing like breath, like heartbeat, like temptation itself. Ryan moved first. He stepped closer, his face unreadable yet open, as though holding something fragile. He reached out, not grabbing, not forcing, just letting his fingers brush mine, testing the space between us like a swimmer's toe breaking the surface of still water. "I didn't bring you here to build a shelf," he said quietly, like a confession meant for no one else's ears. I didn't answer. What could I say? I wasn't shocked. I wasn't innocent. I'd known the moment I saw Jonah in the kitchen, the way Luca's chain caught the light from the hallway. This wasn't about furniture. It was about a choice none of us had spoken aloud, but all of us had already made. Jonah leaned against the far wall, arms folded, eyes locked on me like he was watching me unravel in slow motion. He didn't speak, but his stillness said it all: permission, approval, expectation. Luca, though, was already moving. He passed Ryan, their shoulders brushing, and came to stand just inches from me. One finger slipped beneath the hem of my shirt. Not to lift it, not yet. Just to feel, just to sense the heat beneath the fabric. His gaze followed the way my body tensed, the way my breath caught. His voice was low, smooth, deliberate. "You've been wanting this," he said. Not a question, but a certainty. And God help me, he was right. This wasn't about possession. It wasn't about power. It was about being seen, truly seen, by three young men who could have chosen anyone, yet somehow chose to orbit me. It was about the shock of being wanted again after years of being overlooked, forgotten, or remembered only in passing. Each of them looked at me like I was something to be unraveled, not judged. Ryan's hand still held mine, his thumb tracing slow, deliberate circles over my knuckles. Luca's touch lingered beneath my shirt, heat radiating from his palm. And Jonah finally moved. He stepped forward, steady, certain. His eyes locked on mine, daring me to look away. He reached for my jaw, tilting my face upward with quiet care, as if searching for every truth I carried. The fear, the hunger, the resistance crumbling like weathered stone. His thumb brushed the corner of my mouth. Not a kiss, not a promise, but something that lived in between. "I won't hurt you," he murmured. None of us will. But you have to let go. Let go. The words struck deep, echoing behind my ribs. Because that was the choice, not youth, not temptation, not even desire. It was the decision to fall forward without bracing for the ground. To allow myself to be touched, wanted, consumed. And I did. Not in some sudden, sweeping gesture, but piece by piece, like threads loosening from a knot. I closed the space between Jonah and me, not with a kiss, but with my palm against his chest, feeling the quiet thunder of his heartbeat through the cotton. Ryan moved behind me, his breath warm near my neck, his presence wrapping around me without even touching. Luca circled slowly, his fingertips brushing my waist. Never greedy, always teasing. They didn't rush, and that was what undid me most. The patience, the reverence, as if I were something to be learned slowly, not devoured. Ryan's hands slid along my shoulders, steady, strong. His voice low, saying something I couldn't quite catch, yet felt in my bones. Jonah leaned closer, lips near my ear. We want you, all of us. And Luca, Luca, pressed close, that wicked grin on his face, his breath quick, his touch still careful. Tell me when, he whispered, as if waiting for a signal only I could give. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. It wasn't about power. It was about being seen, truly seen, by three young men who could have chosen anyone, yet chose to stay in my orbit. After years of feeling overlooked, forgotten, or remembered only in passing, the way they looked at me was almost unbearable. Like I was something to be discovered, not judged. Ryan's hand rested on mine, his thumb drawing slow, thoughtful circles. Luca's palm lingered against my side, his warmth radiating through the fabric. And Jonah finally moved, stepping forward with steady, deliberate steps, his eyes locked onto mine, daring me to look away. He reached for my jaw, tilting my face up gently, as if searching for something beneath the surface. The fear, the hunger, the walls slowly crumbling. His thumb brushed the edge of my mouth. I won't hurt you, he murmured. None of us will. But you have to let go. Those words echoed inside me like a strike of thunder. It wasn't about youth, temptation, or desire. It was about surrender, allowing myself to be wanted, to be seen without bracing for the fall. And so I let go. Not all at once, but in quiet pieces, like seams loosening. I stepped closer to Jonah, my hand pressing against his chest, feeling the steady beat beneath the fabric. Ryan moved in behind me, his presence warm, his breath close. Luca's fingers skimmed along my waist, teasing, not taking. They didn't rush me. That was the part that undid me. Their patience, their reverence. One would step back so another could step forward. One would hold my hand while another brushed a touch across my shoulder. There was no fight for space, only a rhythm between them, a shared understanding. Time blurred. I lost track of who stood where, whose voice spoke softly near my ear, whose touch lingered at my back. I only knew warmth. I only knew connection. They learned me slowly, with patience I didn't know I needed, and I gave myself over like a country ending a long, quiet war. When the moment finally broke open, when I couldn't hold back anymore, it wasn't perfect. It was trembling and raw, full of quiet gasps and the sound of movement in the dark. Jonah's hands cradled my face as if committing it to memory. Ryan's touch was steady, almost worshipful. Luca's grin had faded, replaced by a tenderness that felt dangerous in its sincerity. No one spoke of love, but something deeper lingered. A collision of need, recognition, and the unshakable truth that I was being chosen, again and again. Afterward, the air was warm, full of breath and heartbeat. I lay still, marked by their nearness. Not in ways the eye could see, but in the way my chest felt heavier, fuller. Luca drifted to sleep first, curled against me. Jonah sat at the edge of the bed, quiet but watchful. Ryan stayed close, fingers laced with mine, his thumb drawing circles as if sealing the night with punctuation. I should have felt guilt. I didn't. I felt claimed, not owned, but held in a place I didn't know I could still belong. And that might have been the most dangerous part. Because once you've been the center of something so raw, once you've been looked at like you're worth the wait, it changes you. You begin to crave not just the closeness, but the way they saw you like time hadn't. You begin to crave not just the closeness, but the way they saw you, like time hadn't dulled you, like you were still worth memorizing. And now, I'm not sure I can go back. They didn't leave. The three of them stayed, the night stretching out in quiet fragments. I could feel Ryan's breath at my back, Luca's weight near my side, Jonah's hand resting lightly over my heart as though afraid I might disappear. We didn't sleep right away. At one point, I turned to face Ryan, and he welcomed me without hesitation. There was no rush, no need to prove anything. Just a steady meeting in the middle. Jonah's arms found me from behind, grounding me with a calm steadiness, his touch saying what words couldn't. And Luca moved closer, looking at me with that rare mix of hunger and gentleness. His hands smoothed over me as if undoing years of quiet ache. They shared me that night, not in pieces but in moments. Not out of routine but as if honoring something fragile and rare. I had thought I'd lost youth, desire, and belonging. But in their presence, I realized those parts of me had only been waiting. And maybe that was the real danger. Once found, some things can't be forgotten. Luca's voice turned uncharacteristically soft as he whispered, "I'll be the one you remember." And he was right. There was something about the way he moved, unhurried, certain, as if the night itself would wait for us. His forehead rested against mine, his breath warm, his hands steady, holding me as though keeping a moment from slipping away. There came a point, God, I'll never forget it, when all three of them were close. Ryan's breath against my throat, Jonah's hands grounding me, his touch firm and steady, Luca leaning into me, as if he wanted to press more than just warmth into my skin. And in that moment, something inside me gave way. Not loudly, not with spectacle, but quietly and completely, like a candle's last flicker before the room goes dark. When it was over, words felt impossible. My body was still, my breath slow and deep, like waves too tired to touch the shore. They didn't leave, not right away. Instead, they stayed in these strange, beautiful arrangements. Ryan tracing idle patterns along my ribs, Jonah's slow breathing against my shoulder, Luca draped across my legs like a secret I didn't want to let go. I drifted somewhere between wakefulness and dreams. The room was dark, save for the pale gold of the hallway light spilling across the floor. In that hush, the weight of what we'd done settled in. Not regret, but the knowledge that we'd crossed into a place we couldn't uncross. Morning didn't arrive gently. It crept in with stiff muscles, aching joints, and the reminder that some things, once done, cannot be undone. I woke alone. The sheets were still warm where they'd been, the air still charged. Their clothes were gone. The door left slightly ajar. I couldn't say when they'd left or whether they meant to leave without a word. A part of me thought they might still be somewhere in the house. Another part knew better. The mirror in the hallway caught me as I passed. I stopped. I didn't look younger, but I looked different. There was color in my cheeks, a looseness in my shoulders, a kind of peace I hadn't seen in myself for years. I touched my lips, remembering. In the kitchen, I made coffee with hands that still trembled. The taste was sharp and too hot, but each sip carried echoes of the night before. I sat at the table, staring at the front door, half hoping it would open, half hoping it wouldn't. My phone buzzed, once, then again, then silence. No names, just messages. Last night, thinking about you. Let me know if I can come back. But what could I say? Come back. All of you? One at a time. What are we now, confession or consequence? The house felt both full and empty. Every room still breathed with memory. Every corner held something warm and dangerous. I found Ryan's sock under the couch, Jonah's lighter on the dresser, Luca's hoodie on the armchair, still holding that faint citrus warmth like he'd never left. I pulled it around my shoulders, a shield and a longing all at once. And that's when the question came, the one I'd been avoiding. Was it love? Or was it loneliness dressed in something prettier? I wanted to believe it was more than need. that I was more than a shared fantasy. But a small, quiet part of me couldn't help wondering. What if I was only the fire they warmed their hands over before moving on?